Hello, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be going over how to create a successful GTA 5 roleplay server. Now first of all, this video will not be going into how to physically create a server, but instead how to run one, as well as how to build a community that will prevent toxicity, and how to make your community turn into a positive one. Now, I've never actually ran my own server, but I have a lot of time in both Rage MP servers, as well as a bit of experience in 5M roleplay servers as well, and I've learned a lot of the benefits and deficits of running servers different ways. Hopefully this video will give you some ideas, as well as a baseline on how to build a good RP community, or if you're already running a server, how to possibly improve it. So first of all, we're going to be going over 6 main categories, with them being first off, staff, secondly, rules, going over some of the jobs and how to interact with them, or how to possibly make them a positive experience for players, the economy, gang roleplay, and ending it off with civilian roleplay. Now there should also be timestamps in both the description of this video, as well as if you want to scroll along the timeline, there should be different sections on the video. Now again, starting off, we are going to be talking a little bit about the staff of your server and some good ways to ensure for a good staff and player relationship. So first off, one of the most important and essential parts of almost any roleplay server is, of course, the people who run it. Now, of course, I can't tell you everything, but in general, through my experiences in having to deal with all different kinds of server owners and staff, a big part of building up a good community is listening to the community that you're trying to build up. And a part of that is having staff in place that will be willing to listen to player complaints as well as problems with the server and learn to improve upon it. Now, when you're looking for staff, that is a really big part that you're going to want to look for. You really want to look for people who do have experience possibly running servers, as well as players that honestly have a high level of maturity and can deal with these different players either criticizing the server or just in general making comments about how the server should develop and change. If you are trash talking your own players or causing upsets in the community, or trying to gaslight certain scenarios, all it's going to do is show your community that that kind of toxic and demeaning behavior is acceptable, and then the players will go on to do that to other players, who in turn will go on to do it to others, and it just snowballs from there into a giant ball of toxicity. So you really want to make sure the admins and the staff at the top are being at least a little bit respectful of the community, and at least trying not to make these toxic scenarios worse. Now, other than treating your community obviously with respect and trying to listen to your community, I really do recommend keeping your staff team to a pretty small size. Now obviously, if you're running a huge community, you will need a bit more staff, but keeping a relatively small staff team is very important in what I've seen go on in the past. If you have a very large staff team, unfortunately you cannot really always control them all, and if there is a staff or two that starts to abuse their powers, it's very hard to figure out who it is, as well as to wrangle all the staff together, since they might not be able to be all on the same page. If they're in different time zones, they're in different places, and if you have a ton of them. Keeping a small staff team allows you to first off make decisions as a whole, as well as make sure you guys are all on the same page when it comes to making rule changes, punishing players, adjusting prices, or anything else under the sun that may go on in the server. Also, a huge part that I don't see servers do enough is to set up admin ran events every now and then that would bring the community together and players together a little bit closer, as well as having events for people to step away from everything going on in the server and be able to just relax with everyone and have some good times. Now, before we move on from this section, I do want to leave you with one last comment. The staff team and how they act and react will set an example for the rest of your server, so be sure to give off the vibe and feel that you want the community to reflect. So next, we're going to be talking a little bit about rules on different RP servers, as well as how to create them, what you should be looking for when creating them, and how to make sure players aren't abusing the rules. So to go along with the staff, again, the rules are one of the only other things, besides server features of course, that will shape the server and players before they even join it. Now in my experience, the rules can, and will, make or break a server. You want a good mix of rules around what the server is supposed to be based around. For example, having a lot stricter rules and a lot harsher rules around such as stunt jumps, immersion, and realism will obviously lead to a more serious RP experience, or having slightly looser rules allowing for stunt jumps, somewhat unrealistic events, and less strict RP will most likely lead to a more lighthearted server, and players won't have to worry about being super careful with their character and what their character does. Again, neither way is right or wrong, it's just kind of what kind of server you want to create. Now, in my experience, as cool as having very strict rules around RP and a lot of minor rules covering very small actions is nice, if you want to build a hyper-realistic server, it can definitely lead to players nitpicking very small rules and reporting each other for them over time, leading to a possibly very toxic community. If I was to give advice to a new person making a server and working on the rules, I would say just a simple couple lines that may help you guys out when creating your rule set. First off, make sure there are enough rules to first off cover the main problems such as VDM, DM, toxicity, etc., but not too many where players will be reporting each other over small rule breaks or rules that are easy to break without directly trying to ruin RP. Secondly, make sure your rules don't favor any one particular party, such as rules that give crims a lot of disadvantages while fighting cops or vice versa. And last off, make sure that the punishments fit the rule broken. For instance, if a rule is broken in a way that shows the player is not there to RP or has no intention to RP on the server, I would recommend just making it a permanent ban or talking to the player firsthand, and if it continues, to finally ban them. Now, of course, there are extreme examples of this, such as using exploits to duplicate guns, items, or money, where in this instance, I would just permanently ban them as it's obvious they are not there to actually RP with other players. That's going to be about it for making rules. Now, again, every rule set for every server is going to be different, so this section is a little hard to talk about, but just in my experience, that is just some of the tips I could give from at least a player's perspective as to what the rules should kind of enforce and center around. Another big part of almost any server is both the whitelisted jobs, such as the PD, EMS, and DOJ, as well as the non-whitelisted jobs that are scripted and available for any players, usually consisting of fishing, trucking, garbage, etc., and how they play into a server and how you should possibly work around developing these jobs. First, we will be talking about the scripted jobs and how they play into a server and players, and then we'll be talking about the whitelisted jobs and what to look out for when creating them. So starting off with scripted jobs that any player new to the server can just start and make some money with. You want to make sure that these jobs are all unique to each other, so if players want to go trying out all the jobs, they're getting unique experiences from each one and are able to find one they enjoy more than the others, or if they get bored with one job, there being another job that is different for them to do to switch it up and have some variety. Another huge component that a lot of servers fail to maximize on or work on is progression with scripted jobs and not just progression with the whitelisted jobs. For example, if a player maybe wants to become the head fisherman of the town and make all his money, with that way give him systems to be able to do so. An example of this would be possibly adding in a leveling system with the job, and at higher levels unlocking new activities within that job to earn more money, or new ways to make money within that job that again add to the variety that a player can experience. Another possible feature that not a lot of servers utilize is forcing player interaction, or at least allowing player interaction while doing jobs. A couple simple ways to do this could be allowing multiple players to work on the same job and earn more money slightly per person doing the job, obviously with this having a cap so it doesn't get exploited. This makes it so players can be still playing with their friends or even meeting new friends while doing the job. It makes it a lot more enjoyable. Instead of mindlessly grinding out money alone, they can now be talking with other players, interacting with others as well. Another way to allow more RP with scripted jobs is allowing and having them work with each other. An example of this could be possibly the fisherman again that we were talking about earlier going to sell at a market and he can make his money this way alone, or maybe he can stack up a certain amount and then call for a trucker to pick it up and quote unquote ship it to somewhere else on the map and make more money this way. You could also have both, again, the fisherman and the truck driver maybe have to load 20 bags or something into the truck together so they both at least get a small amount of interaction with each other, and it does make the server feel a lot more like an ecosystem instead of you just grinding and having the server pay you money. Now, we're going to be again moving on to the whitelisted jobs and talk a little about that. Now, obviously all of the common whitelisted jobs on a server are important, but in my opinion, one of the most important ones is the police department and how they are handled, so that is what we are going to be talking about first off. Now, the reason I say that the police on any server is one of the most important ones is because it definitely influences most, if not all, of the criminal activities and interactions. Now, something that's very important for both PD as well as whitelisted jobs in general is to have a very thorough application process, as well as some good training and a lot of it to make sure the PD acts how it should act. Another big point I want to make is to make sure when you are selecting the heads and or leaders for the different whitelisted jobs to make sure that they are there for the RP and for the right reasons, as they, similar to the staff team, will have their behavior most likely reflected in the people under them or that they hire. Now, I cannot give you any specific tips or tell you how to create the most perfect PD on your server, but what I can say is to make sure that the PD on the server are monitored and are held to a much higher standard than almost any group on the server, and make sure that you stop any problems before they have the chance to escalate, and make sure that PD is having an enjoyable time as well. Now, we are not really going to be talking too much about the EMS other than to make sure that they are giving proper RP to players, as having some really good EMS on a server can make it so that even if you are downed or quote-unquote lose a scenario, you at least have some good RP before moving on to whatever next scenario you are going to be a part of. Now, to end this segment off, I do want to talk about another common legal group on most servers, and that would be the Department of Justice, also known as the DOJ. Having laws in place and being able to hold people accountable for breaking those laws is very beneficial for a server. What this means is that when someone hits you or attacks you, instead of just having to get into a shootout, arguing or calling the cops, etc., you can actually go to a lawyer and have the whole RP scenario revolving around it, as well as provide a ton of RP to all parties involved. This also helps to keep the police accountable through in-character means instead of having to resort to reports or admins getting involved in situations that go wrong. For instance, if a cop accidentally shoots you in a scenario, instead of just having to whine and maybe report them or something, you can actually have an in-character means to deal with the situation and provide RP for a lot of people. For instance, if you were to take this cop to court, there would be a lot of RP for the cop who both shot you, you would have a lot of RP yourself, the judge, your lawyer, your cop's lawyer, a jury possibly, witnesses, and all of this stuff. It really does provide a lot of RP for everyone involved, and it also keeps a lot of stuff out of OOC means. In general, having a good DOJ and having good people in a DOJ can really add to the immersion a ton, as it adds real in-character consequences to players and especially cops' action. Now that is going to be about it for the both whitelisted and scripted jobs, and talking about those a little bit, and hopefully it will give you guys some insight into how you should be possibly running both, again, your PD, EMS, DOJ, as well as how you are setting up your scripted jobs. And next, we're going to be talking about a little bit of the economy, which again goes hand in hand with the jobs as well. Now, one of the hardest and most important things to balance on any economy-based roleplay server is, of course, the economy. Now, of course, the economy will be more or less grindy based on what kind of feel you want the server to have, but today I'll just be talking about having a good balance in general when creating your economy. One of the big things that really helps players enjoy servers is having the money obviously be rewarding to get, but to make sure it's not just constantly grinding just to be able to get enough food or water for a day. A good balance, in my opinion, and a good way to handle the economy in general, is to have different levels of everything you can buy. By saying this, I mean, for instance, to have cars for new players that they can earn relatively easily, and then of course a slightly higher class vehicle, maybe a little bit more higher class vehicle, and then at the end some cars that are very hard to get, and if players want to focus on it, can be earned through a lot of work and always gives players something to work towards. This goes for almost every aspect of money spending as well. This means that there should be also low, medium, and high cost versions of almost everything on the server. So if housing, this could possibly mean having motels or hotels for starting players, low cost buildings for players after they've been on the server for a while, a little bit higher for people who really is focused on money, and then of course super high-end housing for players who want to just focus on it and own a bigger house and possibly run some businesses out of it. Another big thing when it comes to the economy is balance. You want all the jobs to be earning around the same amount of money per hour, with obviously more difficult jobs or more important jobs earning slightly more, but not to a point where they are making a crazy amount more than the majority of players. To go along with these sort of jobs, you also want to have a good balance of risk and reward with criminal jobs, where criminals can do low-risk jobs and still earn the same amount as normal civs can, with legal jobs, as well as having some higher-risk jobs where crims can actually make or potentially lose a decent amount of money, but also where crims have to do some planning beforehand and not just activities they can farm over and over again. Another big part of the economy and balancing out and making sure it stays balanced is having various economy drains. Now, by an economy drain, I mean a system or set of systems in place to make it so people can't just infinitely build up money with no consequences, and there are various ways for people to have to drain, again, money from the economy, drain money from people, and make it so people can't just infinitely farm money and have no downsides to it at all. Two really good ways to do this are as follows, but again, there are tons and tons of different ways to accomplish this and to have it done. One idea that I have seen quite a couple servers do is to have a tax on all income you gain and have that tax based about on how much money you own total in both liquid money as well as assets. This also makes it so people are more likely to spend money as they get it in order to stay into a lower tax bracket, and so people who have tons of money have a harder time obtaining even more. A second way is to have item durability or weapon durability, so when using different items or weapons over time, players will have to continually spend more on them and therefore both stopping players from stockpiling different items and weapons and just having a ton of them to go through, and this also forces players to interact with each other to get these items, as well as make them build gang relationships over illegal items on the server as well. Next, we're going to be talking about gang RP and how to create a positive gang RP experience on your server. Now, something very hard to control on almost any server is having a high level of gang roleplay, but this can be at least helped in quite a couple ways. One of the first ways is before even creating a gang, to force them to create a backstory on either your server's forums or some kind of other media, giving the community an idea of what the gang or organization is about, as well as giving the members an idea in their head of the backstory of their gang and what kind of RP that they are going to be trying to go for and achieve. Another big way to really improve the majority of gang RP on a server is to reward gangs that provide good roleplay for the server. For instance, if there's multiple encounters with a certain gang, with either, let's just say, gangs, other gangs, civilians, cops, etc., and it seems that a lot of these players are always having good experiences or creating good experiences for all involved, maybe having an admin go in game and either give them a mission or missions, or maybe at some point maybe reward their good RP with allowing them to import certain items can really make it so gangs will focus on RP a lot more, as, of course, it may benefit them. Another way to do this is to have gangs show off their RP through forum posts, and if over time they have a high level of roleplay and what seems to be a consistent level of high roleplay, to again reward them with either a custom hideout, import rights, or some other reward to show them that the admins and staff have taken note of their gang and want to help them upkeep this level of high RP and give them ways to continue it. Now again, gangs are probably one of the hardest things to control on almost any server you create, and how you control the gangs will obviously differ a ton server to server, as well as what gangs are on your server, but as I did with the rules earlier, if I could give a couple bullet points of advice, I would give the following. First off, make sure that any gangs in the server are at least attempting at some kind of RP. If a gang there is just there to obviously shoot and make money, you most likely won't want them in your server, as over time they will just show the server a low level of RP, and in most cases will not obviously add anything to the server as a whole. Secondly, if a gang, or almost any other group of players for that matter, is constantly and consistently taking stuff OOC, as well as being generally toxic to the server population, to first off, in my opinion, have a quick OOC talk with the gang on Discord or something, or at least talk with the higher ups, and if they continue to show this amount of toxic behavior, obviously, unfortunately, ban them from the server. And lastly, having a limit on the amount of members per gang is very beneficial. This makes it so gangs have to show off either through their RP or through their skills and cannot just win scenarios through overpowering numbers. So that's going to be about it for gang RP, and next we're going to be talking a little bit about civilian RP. Now, this section, talking about civilian roleplay, will probably be a pretty small section, but in general, from what I've seen on servers, there is usually a very low amount of civilian roleplay, so having systems in place to promote civilian RP is also a very important thing to have in mind when creating a server. Whether this means letting legal citizens have a couple advantages over regular citizens that have a record, or allowing citizens to create businesses legally and possibly, if there is RP for it, to support them through administrative means. Having some good civilian RP really does add to a city, and makes it feel a lot less cop and robber-esque, and really does make it feel like a true city, with of course legal and legit businesses in it as well, and not just a bunch of people who are in gangs or in PD. That's going to be unfortunately about it for the civilian RP. Other than that, all I can say is try and promote it as much as you can, because having civilians on your server really does add to the server as a whole, and also makes it so it's of course not just a cop and robber server, or makes it not just feel like that. So that is going to be about it for this video. So in conclusion, I hope that this video has helped anyone looking to create their own server, and maybe gave some ideas to people currently running servers on how to improve them. Now, of course, I've never ran a server myself, but as I said in the beginning of this video, I personally have had a lot of experiences on different servers, and I've seen the pros and cons to different ways that people would run them. And now, ending this video off, I just want to say that a lot of people do go on RP servers to get away from stuff in their normal life, and one of the most important parts when running any kind of server like this is to try and keep the toxicity on the server to a minimum or almost a none. When people get on a server to escape from stuff in the real life, they don't want to be greeted with tons of hate, either IC or OOC, and keeping and creating a positive community will be the thing to keep people coming back for months on end, and not just making a server where you go on for a month or two, have some fun, and then leave. Also, just a couple things on the end here. Having community meetings, either monthly or weekly, can really bring a community together and really help discuss the issues and potentially ways to solve them as a community, and it really gives the players a better sense of what their admins are thinking as well as what the staff is thinking as a whole. To end this off, again, I hope this video has helped you out in any way, whether you're creating a server, looking to create a server, or are currently running one. If you guys have enjoyed, please make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe. It really does help out a lot. And I will see you guys in the next video.